I did come out to my parents as, polyamorous. And it was after meeting Lauren, who became a full-time partner of ours, and we were both in love with her. And I was like, well, you can't really hide this. She's in our home every day. My parents are going to come visit. They're going to meet her. They're going to know her. And I want them to.
Welcome to Sweet Release. Okay, Jessica, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Happy to have you here in the Water Palace.
Yeah.
So you are a dynamic writer, speaker, podcast host of your own podcast, and it's under the realm of just kind of polyamory, open relationships, and ethical non-monogamy. So let's start with hearing how your journey came to be in that world.
Yeah.
Where did it all start?
Well, I guess it started 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, I think, when my now husband, who was just a, boyfriend, partner of mine at the time, dipped our toes into the world of non-monogamy. Sort of accidentally, and it's a running joke that we call it the accidental threesome. In fact, it was the first episode of my podcast ever where my friend Ginger Banks interviewed me about how that went down. Like, completely accidental, just one too many cocktails on New Year's Eve, and we took home one of my best friends. And she and I had always had flirtatious energy, but we never really acted on it. And I think being a younger woman in my 20s, I had always repressed my desires towards women and denied my bisexuality, really, because I came from, a Catholic upbringing, which I sort of moved away from at a very young age, but that shame and that guilt and that good girl programming really stay with you. And so it wasn't until I was actually with a partner that I felt safe with and seen and completely accepted for who I was, that I think I felt the security to explore that side of me. And so that one night unleashed an entire relationship evolution from monogamy, which we unconsciously were choosing monogamy because it's mononormativity and we're so young and we don't know any better. We don't know there's any other kind of relationship out there. I mean, maybe we had heard about, you hear about swinging or whatever when you're younger, but I had no idea the options that were available to me. And so over the years, I would say the first few years of our relationship and early marriage were spent exploring. Okay, well, what do we like? Well, what do we want to do? Do we like sex parties? Do we like more curated, events, small orgies? Do we like to go to, Burning Man, which we obviously do? Or do we want to date people? Do we want to get on apps and meet people, on Fields or Hinge and go that route? So we've done all of that. We've done it all. And that's sort of what brought me to want to podcast and to share about it, because I was very private for a long time about this part of my life. Hardly anyone knew, just my closest friends. Again, lots of sort of wanting to keep things under the rug, which is where you keep all taboo, secret things in families, that grow up, or not families, but I should say, in pockets of society where this is unacceptable. So it took me a while to come out, but once I did, I felt well, there could be more resources about this, and I would love to be someone who's showing it in a positive and healthy light. And then Open Late Podcast was born.
I love that.
Thank you.
And your work is so good on there.
Thanks.
So, I'm a fan. So coming out, was that tough for you? You consider yourself bisexual, correct?
Yes. So I made the process tougher than it needed to be. My parents didn't bat an eye really when I never really came out about being bisexual. I sort of just started to tell people that we would hook up with women, but I did come out to my parents as, polyamorous. And it was after meeting Lauren, who became a full-time partner of ours, and we were both in love with her. And I was like, well, you can't really hide this. She's in our home every day. You know, my parents are going to come visit. They're going to meet her. They're going to know her, and I want them to. So I stressed out about it, which was so unnecessary. I mean, I told my parents, and they were like, cool. Like, it's almost, I don't know. Sometimes we forget that the world perceives us way different than we perceive ourselves. And they saw me as this, you know, very fringe, very always testing the boundaries and kind of pushing outside the norm. And I think my dad even said to me, he's like, you don't ever do anything conventional. So this is to be expected. Yeah, he's like, nice. if you guys are happy, I'm happy. And it was very sweet. My mom will still ask me questions because she's confused by it all. Like 5 years after finding out, she'll still say, I just don't understand how it works, you know. And I try to remind her she might never be able to, because her mind works in a monogamous fashion and my mind doesn't. And the way that I look at relationships and love really has almost different wiring, likely different, you know, neurological programming. And we're actually starting to see that, you know, as we study the brain more. So I just remind her, like, it's okay that you don't understand, and it's not for everyone to get, you know, but she's like, I accept you, love you, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Has your dating always been together, or do you often date separately?
We often date separately, yes. In the beginning, sure, we did. A lot of our experiences were together. It was Pasha who encouraged me to date men on my own when there was a time in our relationship where we spent a lot of time apart and we were working completely different schedules and we just weren't seeing each other a lot. And he was like, I'm definitely not meeting your needs. I know I'm not meeting your needs. I know my wife. She is a horny bird. So he was like, and I hadn't even really thought about it truthfully, because I was so, I think when you like take the lid off the box, you know, for me with women, I was like, oh my God, I could like go down this rabbit hole forever. I've wanted this for a really long time and now it's available to me. But he was like, he kind of reminded me, he's like, you know, I am totally open to being with men as well. And I was like, okay, interesting. And so we started dating separately, which was a huge learning curve for me. I never dated from an empowered place as like a woman. So yeah, we've been dating separately for a long time, probably 8 out of the 10 years. But we do like to do stuff together still.
Right.
I would say it's
cool
a good...
you have a partner together. I didn't know that, because I actually did know that you did separate, because I think the first connection we've ever had was I went on a date with Pasha.
Yes.
And then we
which I love this. Yes.
And I was like, wait, I went on a date with you? I had forgotten. And he was like, yeah, you never texted me back or something. Or just like the timing of it didn't end up.
That's always the way.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So it's funny. I'm trying to remember how it was, because we realized that you went on a date with Pasha only after you and I had a connection, because we were sort of hooking up with the same person. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, you live right down the street from me. And I think we started talking, and I think maybe exchanged Instagrams or something. Or I don't know, maybe our mutual friend told you more about me, and you put 2 and 2 together. I think that you went on a date with Pasha, and then I showed him your picture, and he was like, I definitely went on a date with that girl. She played me a song in her car.
Oh, that's what it was.
Like, he remembered that.
Yes. I had a favorite song, Mumford & Sons. I can't remember it now, but anyways,
I love them.
Yeah, small world. The swinger kind of lifestyle community out here is small. So did you guys... What part of, I guess, the fun stuff do you like the most? Like, do you guys still do parties? Have you kind of moved into more sensual relationships, or?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We never really got into the LA like scene ever. So it's really kind of hard to believe, but a lot of the playing that we've done in bigger spaces, when we travel, we'll check out like a sex party. Like when we were in Berlin last year, we went to the Kit Kat Club, and that was like such a highlight experience. And then we have been to a few parties in LA, but we've never liked anything enough to go back a second time. So like, you know, the Kinky Rabbit, the Sanctum, the this or the that. Sometimes people will curate, you know, their own. And so we never found community in LA around the culture. I would say Burning Man is a bit different. And so through that community, I think being in more experiences with just friends or people that we know. So I wouldn't say that we don't enjoy it, but we just never found our groove in it. And so the world is really small, and I feel like now I know everyone through podcasting. And like that's how I found out about like all of these cool clubs. I mean, and Skirt Club, you know, which is like for all women.
Is that in
you
LA?
know about Skirt Club? Yeah, they have like in LA. They have like a chapter in every city. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, all like major cities. So I would say we do enjoy it, but the other thing is I think our life gets in the way. We don't prioritize it. And so over the years, we have leaned more into sensual relationships with other people, whether that be together with like a third or another couple, or dating separately. Like we've both had full-on relationships with other men, other women. And that's where I think we've found more fulfillment, because for us, we are a bit more about intimacy. It's really fun to go to a party every now and then, but it's not like, I think, where we would spend most of our time. And so, yeah, I mean, Lauren is a huge part of our lives still, but we dated romantically for about 2 years. And then even after their relationship fizzled out, she and I sort of carried on. And then we were like realizing that our relationship is extremely intimate, but also very platonic. But I feel like she held so much space in my life that I didn't feel the need to really date anyone else for the past like almost 4 years. And yeah, I think Pasha has had like 2 women that he would, call like a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. But if it's not, I hate using the term kitchen table polyamory, because I like these labels and these boxes sometimes can box you in. But for us, if it doesn't feel good for everyone and we're not like, okay, cool, I love this partner for you, or this feels really expansive, then it's not really going to work for us at this stage in our lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm a firm believer of like baby steps and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of like used those words to help people when they're opening up their relationship, or when they're kind of leaning into the E&M world. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you did that in your relationship with Pasha? Were there some baby steps that you took or boundaries that you set?
We did. In the very beginning, we had the boundary of we didn't want, we were also sort of trying to keep things under wraps. So for me, it was important that we kept this private for just us. And this was like years of unpacking. Like really the reason I didn't want anyone to know is because I had like a lot of self-judgment. But in the beginning, we agreed that we would not date any of our friends. We wouldn't be sharing this. We would only sort of, we've always been a tell each other everything sort of couple. There's never been like don't ask, don't tell. Mm-hmm. In our relationship. So we're like very forthcoming, and not to hook up with anyone that we worked with was like kind of a rule in the beginning, and I'll call it a rule, not a boundary, because I think Jonah Hill taught us very clearly a couple weeks ago the difference between boundaries and rules. But I would say that a lot of those things fizzled away pretty quickly, because we realized that we're both very kinky people and we enjoy the idea of each other with other people. So like match made in heaven, neither of us have had much jealousy. Of course it comes up, and it has, but we love personal development. Pasha and I, like, we've been to like all the Tony Robbins courses and done all of these. Like, we'll go to like workshops and, you know, doing plant medicine, like ayahuasca retreats, and, you know, facilitating ceremonies with other plants. So the exploration of like our limits and what we think is good, bad, right, and wrong for me is like, that is what I'm addicted to in life. And so to keep myself from brushing up against my edges seems so counterintuitive for why I'm here. And so, of course, within reason, I'm not trying to like jump down the well and like learn everything at once. But I think by stripping away a lot of those boundaries or rules that we had early on, it really helped to know each other better and like bring up the triggers. So then we can sit together and say, okay, why does this hurt you? Or why does this make you uncomfortable? Where does it come from? And then it's only in knowing like the deep-rooted place that insecurity lies that you think is jealousy, but it's really a fear of maybe abandonment. It's not until you actually find that you can heal it and be free of it. So for me, that was like always the goal. And it's always been such a reason for us to be able to love each other better, because now we know what the other one needs. But if you're never triggered, you're not going to be able to say, oh, well, you know what? When you do this, I'm actually going to need a little bit more attention in this place or that place. Or, oh, when you go on a date, I should really go have some girl time because that's what I crave and that's what fills me up. So like being with my best friends or watching a movie that I love, and finding the ways to realize that you can meet all your own needs and having those needs met when you're in a non-monogamous container is so helpful for not projecting your, you know, issues and your insecurities onto your partner. So when we have a lot of boundaries, I feel like it takes away from how much you can learn about yourself. So we eliminated them pretty early. I mean, we still have our, you know, basic respect. Like, we share everything with each other. Although we recently started playing with actually not telling each other some things, because now we're like, well, it's boring. So like now I want you to date people and not tell me anything.
Spice it up a little.
Yeah.
Let's try something new.
And I was like, well, I'm hoping that like, you know, he'll run into a woman that actually has a boundary that doesn't want me to know, because and this is like a whole other topic, but I'll just share quickly on it. You know, over the years we've learned, oh, this is actually like not okay for you to tell me everything that happened with this woman without her knowing, you know, or vice versa. But, you know, we were so young and figuring it all out. We were doing it wrong. You know, you just don't know. And then you like come up in this, you know, sort of wild, wild west of non-monogamy, because it's not regulated. Like, monogamy is so I'm saying regulated to be funny. But I was like, oh, we're doing this wrong. This is actually, you know, not considerate and
not consensual.
Not consensual, yeah. And so once we sort of relearned that and like incorporated that into our world and the way that we live, you know, like never come across any woman who's like not okay with me knowing, you know, details and things that I don't really ask anymore anyway, because, you know, 10 years in, it's all sort of well and good with me. But now I'm like, can there just be somebody? Like, I found myself wishing that there would be a woman who would say like, oh, that's a boundary for me. I'm uncomfortable with it. I'd rather, you know, your wife not know. But it never happened. So finally I'm like, well, why am I waiting for that when I can create that situation? And here I am telling people like, don't ask, don't tell. It has never worked for me. And I personally don't think it's like a healthy way to start out. And now, you know, 10 years in, I'm like, I want don't ask, don't tell. Like, can we do something different? Yeah, so now we sort of play with that. But I mean, you know, I'm about to have twins in November. And so the interesting thing is we have very little time, and we've hardly had, you know, sort of external of our relationship experiences with with anyone in a long time. Well, that's not true. Pasha went on a few dates while I was traveling, and I met this like really adorable, very sexy guy while I was traveling too, and made friends with him. But other than that, this entire year has been focused on our relationship and starting a family. So there's been little time for this sort of play, which has had us focus on each other a lot more, which has been really nice.
That is nice.
Yeah.
I find that there's a bit of a ebb and a flow, and you know, the energy you're getting for, like, I'm giving a lot of energy to work right now, or just producing content, and so sometimes I catch myself not as maybe kinky or feeling as sexy because all of my energy is going towards that.
Yeah.
So I definitely see where it can just like change and put your energy elsewhere. And I want to get to the twins, but not yet. I want to talk because you said you're a kinky person. I'm a kinky person too. I like how you like to hear what your partner's doing. That's something that I've always found is such a key special piece when you're in open relationships, because for us, we crave that too, or I do. I know I do. And so I like watching my partner with someone else. I like kind of thinking about it and fantasizing about it. Is there any other kinks that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah.
Besides that.
Well, as I'm sitting here, I'm like looking over at above your bed, and you have, you know, shibari ropes and handcuffs and, you know,
chain
whips and chains. Yes. I love impact play, and I love to be restrained. Yeah. Anything where I relinquish control is a big turn on for me.
So do you consider yourself submissive?
Yeah. I can switch, but I'm much more submissive. I'm like 70-30, maybe even 75-25. And I've not played so much in the dominant realm, maybe a tiny bit in my partnership with Lauren, but we always end up like laughing and being goofy about it. So which is fun. Yeah, which is fun. That's the thing about sex with girls. There could be so much more giggling than sex with guys. But yeah, I love impact play. And I've not really delved too deep into I'm like looking at all of your amazing stuff, but I've not delved too deep into the world of shibari, but I would like to. Yeah, I like marks. Like, that would turn me on if, you know, like someone left a mark on me from like a flogger or a paddle. Yeah, that's really it. That's what gets me going a lot. I'm not so much, I will role play. It's fun, but it's not like what really gets me going. And I also love degradation.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Nice. I have a like embarrassment and degradation kink. Actually, funny story. Please for my birthday this year, it's not going to be as sexy as it sounds like it's going into, but I had a party and I asked my friends to roast me, like how you would see on Comedy Central, right. You know, where they would like roast a comedian host for their birthday. So, and my friends are like extremely talented actors and producers and voiceover artists. And so they got together and they put together an epic, like 3-act, and the theme of the party was like mythological creatures, gods and goddesses. So they did like a 3-act Greek tragedy about me. And it was the most turned on I had been in a very long time because people made fun of me for hours. And so that's when I was like, oh, I have a really like sick, kinky, like degradation, you know, fetish. And one of my friends said it, she's been on my show, Maria Louisa. She was like, oh, you have a degradation kink. I was like, yes, how did I never know? Like, I know that I like to be called, you know, things in bed, but that sparked something for me where I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This gets me so excited. And I love to explore the psychology of kink. Have you read Existential Kink?
No, I haven't. I've heard of it,
Such
though.
a great book. You have to read. I have it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can borrow it.
Yeah, so
or you might want to get your own, because like I scribbled notes all over, and it's like such a good book to write notes in. But I like to explore like where they come from. And, you know, if you really think about it, they are tied to our childhood.
Most are.
And yeah, and it's about expressing yourself and acting them out in a safe way to like heal those parts of yourself.
So did you have an embarrassing moment or some?
I think I've had several. Yeah, I think that embarrassment was like a big part of my childhood. I had older cousins who would like embarrass me, and I remember like kind of having a crush on one of them, and I remember my mom embarrassed me in front of a crush, and so I think like that imprint in me, like in my body, like, you know, somatically, like I've worked on working that out before, and it felt very connected to like being made fun of, or, you know, being silly and playing with friends. And like I had a lot of cousins growing up, and it's also tied together. There's so much innocence in it all, because it's like, you know, that pre-adolescent stage where everything's developing and you're going through puberty, and then, you know, things as you progress, you know, turn into your full sexual being when you're, you know, younger. And I think it's very healthy to look back and follow the thread to like where it stems from, because then you can really understand yourself more and your wants and your needs. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so important. That's why these types of relationships are so fruitful, because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, you dive deep, you figure out what the psychology is of your mind and your body, and figure out what pleasure you want, and all of that.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Twins. You're having
Yes.
twins.
Having twins.
And I'm a twin, so I'm a fan.
Wait a minute! Oh my god! Did I know this?
I thought I told you. That's why I was so excited.
Oh my god, you did. That's right. When I like posted on IG.
When you posted, I was like, oh my god.
A couple people told me that they were twins that I didn't know about too. I'm like, there are a lot more twins in the world. You have a twin brother, right?
No, it's a sister. Identical sister, yeah. She's here in the marina as well.
Oh my gosh.
So do you know the sex of the twins? Yeah.
One boy, one girl.
Oh, that's exciting.
We actually put into embryos, for people listening who, you know, don't know me, I had a hysterectomy when I was 28, and so I always knew that I wouldn't be able to like get pregnant. But we did freeze a bunch of embryos at that time. It was when Posh and I were first married, and we like didn't even know if we wanted kids. I thought I didn't want kids for a very long time, but we were like, let's do this now. It makes sense. We'll get some young, healthy embryos, you know, and 10 years later, we have a surrogate who's carrying them. So with that whole process, you can choose the sex of your babies, because you know what the embryos are.
Oh, okay. So you chose a boy and a girl, and they both got fertilized.
They both took.
Oh, wow.
Or I should say gender. I said sex. I was so bad at this.
I'm bad at that too.
Yeah, we chose a boy and a girl. I wanted actually to allow the doctor, the clinician, whoever is defrosting them and implanting them, to have it be random, or to choose like the healthiest viable embryos, which I didn't know what they were, and put them in. And I didn't want to find out until birth. And Pasha was like, absolutely not. It was like, I'm putting my foot down. Like, you can have whatever else you want, but like, we're having a boy and a girl. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, they're going to be whoever they're going to be. We'll see.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And how is that relationship like with the surrogate?
Amazing. Yeah, we have such a good relationship. She's actually flying in tomorrow with her whole family. No, they live in Denver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she lives in Denver, well, south of Denver. And I met her through a friend of a friend who,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
And has she done it before?
No, this is her first time. She has two daughters, so she's been pregnant twice and has given birth 2 times. And she was not like, I'm going to sign up with an agency and be a surrogate. Like, that was not her path. She was intending to be a surrogate for one of her really good friends who was having trouble getting pregnant. And that woman, and I think they probably were even going the IVF route and it wasn't working, and Carly told her that she would be a surrogate for her, and she ended up getting pregnant, like I think on like her last try or something, like really amazing. So she got pregnant and everything was really successful and beautiful and healthy. They just had their baby in February, I think. And Carly was telling our mutual friend that she's like, you know, I kind of like got ready, like emotionally, and like, you know, thought about the whole surrogacy thing. And now that it's not happening, like, I kind of still want to do it. And so our mutual friend Carmen was like, well, you should meet this couple. I know in California they're looking for a surrogate right now and you would love them. And she said no initially, because she's like, no, like I would only do it for like a family member or someone that I'm super close with. I don't want it to be transactional. It's, you know, it seems like a whole different like ball game, and I don't really want to go down that road. And so Carmen was like, okay. But she brought it up to her again, like a few months later. And I think actually what had happened is I went to Denver and I did a sound meditation, and Carmen came to it, and I like hung out with her and her husband, and we went hiking, and we had spent the weekend together. And I think she was like, you really should reconsider. Like, you really should meet Jess and just see. And so Carly was like, okay, you know what? Let's do a FaceTime. And she called me and we FaceTimed, and like within a minute we were like bawling.
Oh
so it was
gosh.
like literally we picked up the phone, and I knew when I saw Carmen's name on the phone, I was like, this is about the surrogate. Like, I knew what she was calling me about instantly. And yeah, so it was like very kismet.
Fate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
so exciting.
Yeah.
What are you, do you have any fears about becoming a mom, or is it all excitement? And
Wow, great question. I don't have a lot of fears. I have such a strong support like network and team. You know, at home, my best friend lives with us, and she was a nanny before for her brother's family. Like, she's raised 2 kids. She has two younger brothers and sisters too. And yeah, and Pasha's like in such a great place for this to happen. So I think like when it comes to taking care of them, and I know we'll be overwhelmed. You just can't go from like 0 to 2 without it. But I don't have a ton of fears in that way. But I will say I've been reading and listening to a ton of books. Like, I have never prepared for something like I'm preparing for motherhood, which is so funny because I'm a very spontaneous person. Like, I remember the first time I was like, okay, we're going to do this podcast. Like, I didn't have anything ready, and I just like started recording, and I, figure it out as I go along. That's how I've always been. But I want to do a really great job with this, and I want to show up for my kids. So I would say my only fear, like listening to all of these books about conscious parenting, like Dr. Shivali, like, Awakened Family, and the book I wish my parents had read, which is all about like how we're essentially triggered by our kids, so that like our kids are actually here to sort of raise us out of being unaware of our own patterns, and just like looking at your kids as a mirror so we don't like project all of our stuff onto them, which is what usually happens. So I think that's my only fear, is like, am I like conscious enough to do the best job, and not project like my fears or my wants onto my kids. I want to just let them be whoever they are, and just sort of give them great space to express themselves.
it seems like you're doing the work.
Yeah.
So I think, and you're in a very energetic, wonderful like space,
Yeah.
you and your partner. So you're going to be a great mom.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
so
hope so. Yeah. Do you have any twin advice for me?
I was actually
being
just
a twin.
Say that I do.
Yes, please share.
Well, I guess having 2 different genders is completely different than growing up with an identical twin, but we didn't know we were identical actually till a few years ago when we did 23andMe. Oh. We always looked so much alike, so it was always like, yeah, we were born fraternal twins, but we look a lot alike.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool to find out that, the egg split early enough and created 2 separate sacs, and we ended up being, identical. But what I was going to say was when we were kids, my parents put us in different classes. They had us explore the same sports and the same activities, but maybe we just had a little bit of that independent push from them, but we always chose different activities.
Okay.
And even I know in preschool we were in the same class, but starting in like first grade and on, they asked my parents if they wanted us to be separated or together. They were like, no, I think we want them to be separate, so they can like learn how to be separate, because we had our own language when we were babies. We had our own just like connection. We were very, very shy, and we only wanted to be with each other. And we've always maintained such a powerful twin sisterhood dynamic through our entire lives, which is just so special. Yeah. And so that's my only advice, but I've seen a lot of twins that are the opposite. Like they do everything together, they live together, they went to college together, they did it all. And to me, that's a different dynamic. I like the freedom and the independence of like having our own group of friends, but we also had like our core group of girlfriends together, and we always kind of supported each other through all of our different activities and sports, and it just felt pretty awesome that way. Yeah. But I'm sure whatever happens will be perfect for you guys.
Yeah. You're right. I guess it's a bit easier when you have a boy and girl than to have like identical girls or boys or what have you.
Because they might naturally want to do different things.
Exactly.
Maybe not as close off the rip. Right. It's a different dynamic having.
Totally. But I have read that a lot, to really treat them as individuals as they come, and celebrate birthdays independently, and giving each child their own space to express themselves. And I think that is definitely the way to go. I have a question. You do not have to answer this because it's about your sister, so maybe like you don't have consent here, but do you have a lot of similarities as you've gotten older with this amount of independence? Do you find that you like the same things, or have these, I don't know, ways about you that you're like, oh, well, yeah, we're twins, so obviously, or very different personalities? And
definitely there's a bit of nature and nurture in both of us, like we've kind of taken a little bit different paths, but we have done a lot of the same things. We definitely have this adventurous spirit in us. We both love to travel. We both got our open scuba certification together, and like we like to do some like adventure stuff together. But I do find that we've gone a little bit more independently. But there's things that like I recognize, or we both have bad anxiety, and sometimes that flares up, and it's like, oh, like I can relate, or sometimes one of us is feeling heavier, and we can just relate in that sense because we're both very emotional people. But definitely, I think the older you get, the more different you become in a way. For sure. But there's still those moments where like, oh yeah, you are my identical twin. I forget that you're my same genes and everything. It's
cut from the exact same cloth.
Yeah, it's trippy. But
wow. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy for you.
Thanks. I am too. I'm so excited. All I think about right now.
Yeah, so you're leaning more into motherhood. And so you're kind of putting your energy in that, moving forward. Yeah. It's very exciting.
I know. I'm stoked. It's a whole new ball game.
And does your partner, your girl, want to be involved?
Yeah, I mean, we do still actually call each other partners, so you're not off there at all. But we haven't been romantic in a few years, but we are still very intimate. Like, I mean, she slept in my bed the other night. We hadn't seen each other in a couple of months, and because I was traveling with Pasha, and then I went to the East Coast. so we still kiss like on the mouth, but she actually fell in love with one of our best friends, like one of her closest friends who she met through us, who's like a part of our community. They realized that they were in love with each other in January. So they're building their relationship and they're about to move in together. Wow. So she's actually moving out of our house, which she's been staying with us for probably 9 months. She was doing a lot of traveling. So we were like, sublet your place. Just like when you're in town, you'll be at our house. But we've like really had a good time living together. And I always make the joke, I was like, we had to break up for you to move in. And I call her my ex-girlfriend all the time, even though it's like silly, but it's just fun. So she'll be moving out in September, but she literally lives less than a mile away. So it's like, Mar Vista, Marina Del Rey. So she'll be very involved as like an auntie, and I don't think we'll change anything about the way that we relate to one another. I do think there's nights where she'll still sleep in my bed. We'll kiss on the mouth. We're going to be very close, and my kids are going to know how important she is to me. And I think like at an age appropriate time, they'll probably find out our history, and I even think I don't know what will happen, what the future holds for the two of us in our relationship, but I know that this is her life partner and they're going to have a family together. And so we are just totally like manifesting and fantasizing about all the ways that we're going to be moms together. And it's just it's the best. And that's what I love about non-monogamy and polyamory, because I've found in so many of my relationships and friendships and meeting other people in this community, a lot of times a breakup, which has the connotation of being bad, is usually just a shift or a transition with non-monogamous folks into friendship. Sometimes even into an even more intimate relationship than a sexual one, has like sometimes, not that a sexual one has limited capacity, but I feel that some of my relationships have deepened when I stopped sleeping with those people.
It's true. I'm noticing that too when we've been dating women, and sometimes it does kind of just shift into something better or something different. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that might be good. That's a good place to end.
It's a great place to end.
Yay for polyamory.
Yay for polyamory. Yay for kitchen table poly.
Thanks again, Jess, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you, and I'm so happy to see you as a mama.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your advice, and I'm so happy to see you as a podcaster.
Thanks.
This is dope.
Exciting.
It feels good to be winding down in a way, knowing that there's incredible women just like you that are just gearing up, to do this kind of work, because it's so important. I'm so proud of you, and this is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Yeah.